On an ordinary afternoon, a freshman's quiet walk across campus turned into a moment that froze hundreds of students in shock. The ground shook, windows rattled, and black helicopters tore through the sky before landing right in the center of the university lawn. Soldiers in dark gear stormed out with chilling precision, and then, to everyone's disbelief, they called out one name: Amelia Hart. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. Amelia Hart was not the kind of student anyone noticed. She liked it that way. She walked across campus that afternoon with her textbooks tucked against her chest, thinking only about the notes she still had to review and the shift she would work later at the campus cafe. The sky was bright, the air was calm, and nothing suggested that this would be the day her life would change. Students spread across the quad like usual, some sitting on the grass, others hurrying to class. Laughter echoed from one corner, music from another. It was the normal rhythm of university life, a rhythm Amelia found safe and predictable. Then it happened. The sound came first, distant and unclear. At first, Amelia thought it was construction nearby, or maybe a low-flying plane passing the city. The noise deepened into a growl, then a roar, shaking the air around her. She stopped walking. So did everyone else. The voices faded, the music paused, and all heads tilted upward toward the sky. Dark shapes appeared on the horizon. They grew larger quickly, their outlines sharp against the blue sky. Blades spun furiously, slicing through the afternoon calm. Helicopters, not civilian, not medical. These were military machines, their heavy bodies glinting in the sunlight as they descended lower and lower. The ground trembled beneath the weight of their presence. Windows rattled, loose leaves and papers lifted into the air. Students screamed, some scattered in fear, while others froze in disbelief. The campus lawn bent under the violent wind of the rotors. It was no ordinary visit. These helicopters were designed for one purpose: precision and power. Amelia's arms weakened, and her textbooks slipped to the ground. Her heart thumped so hard she thought it might burst. She looked around at the crowd of students, their expressions shifting from confusion to alarm. Nobody understood why the helicopters were here. Nobody except Amelia, who felt a chill crawl across her skin. 1 minute. The machines landed with thunderous force, kicking up dust and grass. The noise was deafening, yet the silence within the crowd was just as heavy. All eyes were fixed on the soldiers emerging from the open doors. They moved in perfect formation, dressed in black tactical gear. Their boots hit the ground in unison, their weapons close but not raised. Their movements were exact, sharp, and disciplined. They were not here for training. This was not a drill. Whispers spread through the students. Speculation bounced across the lawn. Some guessed it was a government display. Others muttered about an emergency. Then the whispers condensed into 2 words that sent fear slicing through the air: Delta Force. Amelia's breath caught. Her chest tightened. Delta Force. She remembered that name from whispers of her childhood, a name connected to her father and the secret she had buried deep inside. Her friends looked at her, confused by the way she stiffened, by the way her eyes locked on the soldiers, as though she recognized them. One of them whispered, "Why are they staring at you?" But Amelia said nothing. How could she explain something she did not fully understand herself? The soldiers spread out, scanning the students. Their gaze was not random. They were searching. The crowd shifted nervously, some trying to back away, others filming on their phones, unwilling to miss whatever was unfolding before them. Then, over the noise of the rotors, one soldier stepped forward. His presence commanded silence. His voice rose above the chaos, firm and unshakable as he called a name: Amelia Hart. Her blood ran cold. Hearing her name shouted across the quad made her knees weaken. Heads turned instantly toward her, eyes narrowing with confusion, curiosity, even fear. Students whispered, "Why her? What did she do?" Amelia wanted to disappear, to vanish into the crowd, but there was nowhere to go. The soldier's gaze locked onto her trembling frame. The crowd parted slightly, making her isolation more visible. The entire campus seemed to hold its breath. Even the wind felt heavy, as though waiting for her to move. Amelia's thoughts raced. She was only a freshman, only a girl from a small town who still struggled to find her classes on time. Yet something deep inside her told her this moment was not an accident. She remembered the pieces of her past she had tried so hard to ignore. And now, as she stood frozen on the edge of the quad, she realized the ordinary life she had built was already slipping away. This was the moment when everything changed. Amelia Hart stood frozen in the center of the campus lawn, the sound of her own name echoing in her ears. The soldier's voice was steady, commanding, and impossible to ignore. Every student around her whispered in confusion, but Amelia could barely hear them. Her thoughts were louder than the noise of the helicopters. She knew this moment was not random. It was connected to something she had tried for years to forget. When Amelia was a child, her father, Michael Hart, had been more than just a parent. He had been a figure of mystery, a man who carried the weight of secrets. He served in military intelligence, often away from home, always careful with his words. He never spoke much about his work, but his presence filled every corner of their small house. Then, one evening, he disappeared. No warnings, no explanations. Only a final night etched in Amelia's memory. She was young, but she remembered the way he had knelt beside her bed, his face lined with worry. He had told her something she never understood at the time. He whispered, "If they ever come, it means I could not make it back. And if that day comes, you are the one who holds what they need." At the time, the words meant nothing. She thought it was part of one of his bedtime stories, strange and serious, but harmless. He made her repeat a series of numbers over and over until she could recite them without mistake. She thought it was a game. She had no idea those numbers might one day change her life. After he vanished, her world collapsed. Her mother avoided questions. Her relatives gave her sympathetic glances, and the town whispered theories. Some said he had abandoned them. Others claimed he had been lost in an accident overseas. But deep down, Amelia always believed there was more to it. Still, she tried to bury it. She grew up determined to live a quiet life, to stay invisible, to never stand out. Going to university was supposed to be her chance to start fresh, far away from the shadow of her father's disappearance. But as the soldiers spread across the quad and the crowd shifted uneasily, Amelia knew that shadow had found her again. Her friends clung to her side, their eyes wide with disbelief. One of them whispered, "Why are they calling your name? What's going on?" But Amelia's lips would not move. How could she explain that years ago her father had prepared her for this exact moment? How could she admit she had carried a secret she herself did not understand? The air thickened with tension. Phones were raised, recording everything. Whispers passed like sparks in dry grass. Delta Force. Military. Why her? The words swirled around her until she felt suffocated. Her heart pounded as she remembered the numbers. They rushed back to her mind like a song she had not sung in years. A sequence, clear and unshakable, burned into her memory. She had not thought of them in so long, yet now they felt sharp and urgent. Amelia's body trembled as she glanced at the soldiers. They were not scanning randomly. Their eyes were sharp, directed, purposeful. One soldier, the one who had called her name, stepped closer. His boots thudded against the ground with weight and finality. The space between them shrank, and so did the distance between her past and her present. She pressed her back against the wall of the library, her breathing shallow. The students near her backed away, not wanting to be caught in whatever storm had arrived. Every eye stayed fixed on her, as if waiting for her to reveal a truth she had never shared. Amelia felt a tear sting at the corner of her eye. But she blinked it away. She could not break down here, not now. She remembered her father's last look, the way his eyes had carried both sorrow and resolve. He had trusted her with something, though she never knew what. And now, standing before these soldiers, she finally understood. The past was no longer hidden. It had come alive on her campus lawn. The soldier's voice boomed again, steady and certain. Amelia Hart. His tone was not cruel, but firm. The kind of tone that left no room for escape. She straightened slowly, her legs heavy but moving. She did not answer, not yet. But deep inside, she knew silence would not protect her for long. For the first time in years, Amelia admitted the truth to herself. Her father's disappearance, the strange numbers, the warnings whispered in the dark, it was all real. And whatever came next, it was tied to her. The hidden past had finally surfaced. Amelia Hart stood motionless as the soldier's boots echoed closer across the cracked pavement of the quad. Every step tightened the knot in her stomach. Students shifted uneasily, torn between fear and curiosity, their phones still raised, capturing every second. Amelia wanted to disappear into the crowd, to pretend her name had not been spoken. But she knew there was no escape. The lead soldier stopped only a few feet away from her. The blades of the helicopters still thundered overhead, scattering loose papers into the air. But the silence of the onlookers felt louder. Everyone waited. The soldier lifted his hands to his helmet. With a deliberate movement, he removed it. Beneath the mask of steel and tinted glass was a face weathered by years of duty. His expression carried no hostility, only a firm resolve and something Amelia did not expect: respect. His voice was calm, carrying over the restless murmurs of the crowd. "Amelia Hart," he said again, but this time more gently. "Your father once saved us more times than you could ever know. And now, what he carried has been passed to you." The words hit her harder than the noise of the helicopters. For years she had lived in the shadow of questions, of whispers about her father's disappearance. Now, in front of her classmates and strangers, she was told that her father's sacrifices had not been ordinary, that his work had reached further than she could imagine. Amelia's legs trembled, but she managed to whisper, "My father is gone." Her voice cracked, carrying both grief and disbelief. ... The soldier nodded. "Yes, but before he vanished, he left something only you could hold. He told us if we ever had to return, it would be because you were the last connection. The last one who knows." Her breath caught. The strange numbers she had memorized as a child flashed again in her mind. At the time, they had been nonsense, just patterns she repeated like a game. But now, as the soldier spoke, their meaning pressed harder against her thoughts. "The sequence," she murmured under her breath, almost without realizing it. The soldier's eyes sharpened. He understood instantly. "Yes," he said, "that sequence is not random. It is the key to what your father preserved. He trusted you because he knew you could remember it when no one else could." Her heart pounded. Around her, the students whispered, confused and restless. None of them understood the weight of what was happening. To them, this was just a spectacle. A shocking interruption of an ordinary day. But to Amelia, it was the unraveling of her life. Her friends stared at her wide-eyed, waiting for her to deny it, to tell them the soldiers were mistaken. But she could not. Deep down, she knew it was true. Memories resurfaced with painful clarity. The night her father had leaned close, his voice low, telling her that one day she would understand. The warmth of his hand on her shoulder. The fear in his eyes he tried to hide, but could not. And then the numbers, repeated again and again, until they were etched into her mind. "Why me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I'm just a student. I don't know anything." The soldier's expression softened, but his words remained firm. "Because he believed in you. He knew you would carry what he could not. You are not just a student anymore, Amelia. You are his legacy." The words pressed against her chest, heavy and impossible to ignore. She wanted to argue, to push it away, but she couldn't. The truth was too clear. She was no longer invisible. She was no longer ordinary. Fear twisted inside her, but alongside it came something unexpected: resolve. Her father had trusted her for a reason, and though she did not yet understand the full weight of it, she could no longer hide from it. The soldier stepped back slightly, giving her space, as if to honor the choice he knew she would have to make. "What happens next is up to you," he said. "But understand this. What your father started is not finished, and without you, it may never be." Amelia's pulse raced, but for the first time since the helicopters had landed, her breathing steadied. She realized the moment she had feared all her life was also the moment she had been prepared for. The truth was now revealed. She was not just the daughter of a man who vanished. She was the keeper of something greater, something hidden, something that mattered. And as the crowd watched her every move, waiting for her to collapse under the weight of it all, Amelia felt a flicker of strength. Her father's voice whispered again in her memory, "When the time comes, you'll know what's right." She did not have all the answers, but she knew the time had come. The campus lawn was still. The helicopters idled like restless beasts, their blades cutting the air with steady force. Yet the true silence came from the students who surrounded the scene. Every eye was locked on Amelia Hart, the freshman who now stood at the center of something far beyond lectures and textbooks. She no longer blended into the background. She had become the focus of history unfolding. Amelia's chest rose and fell with sharp breaths. Her mind carried the weight of her father's words, the soldier's revelation, and the burden of the secret she had kept unknowingly for years. Fear tried to grip her, but another feeling began to stir within her: responsibility. She looked at the soldier who had removed his helmet, the one who had spoken of her father with respect. His gaze did not pressure her. Instead, it offered space. It was as though he knew the decision was not theirs to make. It was hers. She remembered the numbers again, that strange sequence her father had drilled into her as a child. The more she thought of them, the clearer they became. They were not random. They were coordinates, a path to something her father had hidden away, something that mattered enough for him to sacrifice everything. For a long moment, Amelia said nothing. She let the weight of the memory settle inside her. The crowd waited, uncertain and restless. Whispers passed through the students, but none of them could guess the truth. They did not know what she carried in her mind, or how much it meant. Then, slowly, Amelia stepped forward. The move was small, but it silenced the last of the murmurs. She walked past the wall of her fellow students, her shoes crunching against the grass, toward the soldier who had spoken her name. "I remember," she said softly, though her voice carried farther than she expected. "I remember what my father gave me, and I know now why he trusted me with it." The soldier nodded once, his face unreadable, but his eyes filled with certainty. Students gasped. Some raised their phones higher. Others lowered them, as if sensing they were intruding on something they could not fully understand. Amelia's voice grew steadier. "I am not here to hide anymore. I will not run. If my father left something unfinished, then I will see it through. I will finish what he started." The soldier lowered his head slightly, a gesture of respect. "Then you are ready," he said. The air seemed to change. Amelia's shoulders straightened, her fear no longer guiding her steps. Instead, she felt strength building within her. She was still a freshman, still learning who she was, but in that moment, she became something more. She became the keeper of her father's legacy, and she chose to rise into it. Around her, the students stared in silence. Some were confused, some were amazed, but all of them understood one thing. She was no longer the invisible girl they thought they knew. The helicopters roared again, blades spinning faster as dust lifted into the air. Papers flew across the lawn, hair whipped across faces. Yet Amelia stood tall, unshaken. She felt the storm press against her, and instead of shrinking back, she embraced it. The soldier turned to her one last time. "The path ahead will not be easy," he said, "but know this, your father believed in you, and now so do we." His words did not promise safety, but they carried trust. Trust was enough. Amelia looked back at the crowd, at the students who had once seen her as just another name in the lecture hall. Their faces reflected disbelief, awe, and even hope. In their eyes, she was transformed. The helicopters lifted higher, shaking the sky. As the machines rose, so did Amelia's resolve. She was stepping into a role she had not asked for, but one she could no longer deny. The ending of her ordinary life was clear, but the beginning of something extraordinary had just arrived. She whispered to herself, barely audible but certain, "Sometimes courage finds us before we are ready, but when it does, we must rise." As the helicopters carried the soldiers into the clouds, Amelia stayed behind on the lawn, her heart no longer trapped by fear. She was no longer just a freshman. She was the voice of her father's legacy and the start of her own. And so, the girl who once felt invisible stood tall beneath the fading roar of the helicopters, no longer just a freshman, but the bearer of a legacy that would change everything. Her father's courage had found its way into her heart, and now the world would watch as she rose to carry it forward.